This is a good question because I get this a lot with people who have, whether it's intentional or unintentionally, taken on maybe a horse that's gone through trauma, is a rescue scenario. Maybe they don't know the horse's history, but obviously that the horse is showing quite a lot of fear towards humans. And I find that people have really good intentions of trying to create a safe space and trying to be kind to the horse. But what I find often happens is there is not enough clarity in the human to think of the interaction as, or asking themselves, how is their communication offering support to the horse? So, what I find in a lot of rescue and traumatized horses is that people learn how to act in a very sort of tiptoeing around the horse way, trying to not offend the horse, trying not to bother the horse, trying not to scare the horse. But there's no guidelines, there's no boundaries. And if you think of an animal that has never been able or encouraged to think, to search, to try, to have the confidence to make decisions, to have even the most basic horse skills because maybe the humans have taken it out of them. Perhaps they're not eating in a quality way, they're not sleeping and getting the REM sleep that they need. So you have all of these contributing factors that lead to a level of dysfunctionalness, is that a word, in the horse. And then if all that we do is try and pacify areas that might trigger the horse, or we try and smooth over areas that might trigger the horse without actually going into perhaps uncomfortable places that are going to help build that horse's education, then we don't have the tools to actually help the horse, which is then when someone goes, well, it seemed like it was going fine. It seemed like they were accepting me until I added more pressure, more specificity in the communication, and then it all kind of fell apart. And I hear this a lot. I was actually discussing it with a remote coaching client the other day, that it's not about challenging the horse to get it right or suddenly showing up and being aggressive in your demeanor. But what we have to recognize is, or at least what I see in a lot of people, is the more they're trying to be kind, the more passive they are in their communication, the more they are unintentionally leaving the dysfunctional horse flailing. And so we need to learn how to not only spatially but also physically be able to communicate in a way that has value to the horse, which means we need to break down the basics of, like, how does that horse feel about spatial pressure, how do they feel about physical pressure. And until we get these, I'm going to say, tools in our communication refined, we can't be asking more of the horse unless we're hopeful about it and kind of leaving it up to the horse however they may choose to respond. So again, everything is building blocks, and we need to look at it and say, okay, so before I want to ask whatever X, Y, and Z with the horse, have I prepared him? Meaning, does he have, what skill set would he need to know how to respond with? And break that down into, how would I ask? What would I look for in his responses? What would be his feedback if he was okay or not okay? And when you start to break things down like this, it takes away the mystery of if the horse is ready for you to do more with them or not. What I unfortunately find in a lot of folks who try and rehab the horse, especially when there is food related to it, is the horse can very much learn a pattern, can learn a routine, can learn an expectation of what happens during the human experience or interaction. And then the day the human changes that pattern, routine, or the way in which they present something, the horse goes back to flailing and becoming quite dysfunctional and reverts to the old defensive behaviors, whether it's aggressively towards the human or whether it's in avoidance behaviors. So that is where it starts to become apparent that there are still holes in that horse's education, and his lack of understanding and lack of availability, lack of mental directability, lack of ability to let go of fixation or anticipation or physical tension, because during the entire time of the human interaction, there wasn't actually supportive communication. It was, I'm going to say, more passive tolerant communication. So there was a degree of hopefulness, a degree of, if I ask really gentle and I move really quiet and I perhaps don't offend the horse, then maybe he'll be okay, thinking we're building trust. And instead, we're just tiptoeing around the horse, and the horse is anticipating and sort of tiptoeing around us, if you will. And you can see how very quickly you'll feel like you kind of hit a breaking point where the horse is no longer willing to participate if you haven't actually educated him with the ability to think through things, to search, to try to let go of things without emotionally being triggered. You can't add more to his world in the re-education. And if you can't add more to his world in replacing those previously fearful experiences with ones that he is mentally present and physically soft, then that cycle of anticipative traumatic experiences or fear or pain or whatever has happened in his past will keep triggering him to offer you unwanted behaviors.